And I wanted to do a quick video here about some techniques I've been perfecting here with my students to get them to the upper echelon of their scores. Not meaning that all of them get perfect scores, but I've had a pretty interesting range of results. So first of all, I have seen students who had lower scores as low as the 3rd percentile. Now the 3rd percentile would mean that they're pretty close to mentally retarded, actually. So for whatever reason, some students just struggle a lot on their tests and they can't get even the basics right. So if you know the bell-shaped curve, those students would be right about over here on the bell-shaped curve. So there's not many students who on the lower 3% or 1% of their scores. Most students will be over here between a 25th percentile and the 75th percentile. So this represents about 50% of the students. So a score like 21 isn't a terrible score on the ACT, but that is pretty average right here toward the middle. Now, those students who I have seen around the 3rd or 5th percentile, a significant amount of them have been able to make the jump to become average students. So to become, to go from an F, 10% on one test to something more like a 70%, that is a pretty big jump. And to get that sort of average score does qualify one for a lot of colleges. But there's also been students who've had, the 21 or 22, maybe a 24 on their tests, who've been able to make the jump to something like, a 30 or a 31 or a 32. Some students, right around the 50th percentile, have even got to the 95th percentile with me. And, some, more like here in the 75th percentile range, have been even able to get a perfect score, so the 99th percentile. So 99% of the students have been able, they've been able to score higher than 99% of the students who've taken the test. So, these are the sort of ranges that are possible in certain situations. So something like the 3rd percentile to the 50th percentile, or the 50th percentile to the 95th percentile. Now, if you talk to someone at College Board or the ACT Corporation about standardized tests and what they expect, they don't really expect you to move in your score by 1 to 2 percentile points. Their standard line is that, test scores are stable, and they're not supposed to fluctuate much, maybe 30 to 50 points on the SAT and maybe 1 or 2 points on the ACT. So I would say don't limit yourself. If you're using the critical thinking techniques and you are focused and you have a system, you can succeed. So let's see how we can practically put that into action here. I want to do that with 2 problems here I know from Dr. Gruber's test prep book. It's out of print now, but I wanted to show you what a couple of problems look like. First, there's a geometry question, and we're going to use this as a model for how I use the 5 steps in math that have probably helped my students more than anything else on their tests. So these steps can be applied to reading and to grammar to a degree, but it's important to understand the relationships. The reason I say that is if you want to succeed in any field, you really want to ask yourself, what is everyone else missing in that field? For example, people who take their business online or who try to start a business online, 97% of those people will fail. And you might say, well, wow, why is that? Why is it that 97% of the people who try something would fail? Are they overwhelmed? Are they, too busy with other things? Are they unfocused? And in the end, if you want to boil it down to one reason, and you think about what our modern society tempts us to, I would argue it is lack of focus. And that's what I've seen with every student who I've helped, who's been able to make a significant increase in scores, is that they're not as focused as they should be. Whether it's a cell phone dinging or buzzing or ADD or another learning disorder or just not knowing what step to take next, these students are lacking a system, and it prevents them from the sort of focus they need to make big increases in their scores. So whether they're a little slower or whether they're very bright is something I consistently see. And I believe we can apply this to 95 to even that 97% of the situations, because I think that's the same reason people fail online. They don't have a clear game plan, and because of that lack of focus, they are given to what we call dissipation, meaning they're tasting too many things. So that's what it means in Latin, to taste too many things. They're involved in too much, and they're not executing like they should, what they should be doing. So let's look at the 5 steps and how they help us execute. So the first step is to underline. When I say underline in math, what I mean is we're going to set up our problem, focus on what we have and where we need to go. So in philosophy, it's the same thing, and that's why critical thinking is so essential to both the SAT and the ACT. So number 1, we want to underline what we have. The figure is what? Not drawn to scale. So we do have a distortion going on. That's what we have to recognize. And you underline every basic idea that you see. You have what? Area, and a certain figure is a quadrilateral, so we need the whole thing. And this is tied into Dr. Gruber's strategy about parts and wholes. So number 1, we have the right triangle, and then the 3 and the 4 ratio, which practically speaking is like 3x and 4x mathematically, because we know if there is a ratio of 3 and 4 and a right angle, if we have a hypotenuse, a longer side across from a right angle, obviously we want to mark it, right? So you have 3 facts, right angle, a 3 and a 4, therefore we know by definition that this hypotenuse has to be the 5 or the 5x. Now, if this is the 5x, and this is the 12x, and this is the 13x, also by association with our Pythagorean triples, the same theorem, if you have a ratio of 5 and 12, the hypotenuse here would have to be a 13. So if this is a 13, then this has to be a hypotenuse. And now we have those parts that we need. You have what? A small triangle, so we'll draw the pictures first, plus a big triangle equals what we're looking for, which is figure ABCD. So now you can use your formulas. Basically what? A base times a height divided by 2 plus another base times a height divided by 2. So technically we want to show these bases are different, so we could do base 1, base 2, height 1, height 2. We're going to show this is what we're looking for, and now we can label. So the first base we see is equal to 4, the height is equal to the 3, still divided by 2, and then a second base here we see is actually the 5, and the height there is the 12. So we'll be multiplying those multiplicans, be dividing by 2 here too, and now we'll get back into our steps. The second step then, we'll call this the relayed step. I also call it the R1 step, because what we're doing is we're writing the ones where they naturally belong as coefficients, denominators, and exponents. So for example, if I have 3c plus c, that's the same thing as 3c plus 1c. Or if I have 5c over 2. And let's say I'm multiplying times 7c. Well, that's naturally 7c over 1, just to fill out the pattern if we are multiplying. And then if we have exponents, let's say I have 7c to the second, and I'm multiplying times 8c, well, that's naturally 8c to the first. So obviously when I multiply these bases, I'll add the exponents. So these are small reminders of what we need to do, and it's to prevent us from making what? Our careless mistakes. So the careless mistakes, again, smart students, slower students, these are the mistakes we see the most. And if we can get rid of these mistakes, this leads to massive increases in our scores. And obviously we cover the fundamentals along the way. So now it's just a matter of factoring and simplifying, which is actually our third step. So what? Simplify, put like things together, factor, take out the number in common. So here we have the 4 and the 2. They'll cancel. We have a 2 in common there. And here we have a 12 and a 6. And that gives us the 6. So we have a 2 times a 3 now, which gives us the 6. 5 times a 6 now, that gives us the 30. And we can simplify to the 36. And notice how I'm keeping all of those numbers neatly together. I try to do the scratch work on the side if I do have scratch work. And that way I clearly get to what I'm looking for. And what that would really look like here in this particular problem would still be something like, you know, figure A, B, C, D, just to remind myself. And we see it does make sense once I get to the bottom. So that's my 36. Now, a more complicated problem is something like number 5. So, you know, we do see pre-algebra and mathematics and geometry and algebra 2 and pre-calculus and trigonometry too. But these problems cover the essence of what we expect on test day, the types of problems we should be familiar with. So first we underline our math ideas, and we're going to stack our equations. So we see xy here equals 4. And we see that we're looking for x squared plus y squared. So once we have that, we can say it's equal to question mark. And you know, there are 5 basic steps that I use to get students started. The 4th step is called operations. This is when we're combining equations, but also using the order of operations. So with PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract, we'll put the parentheses where they naturally belong. But we'll also, besides the order of operations, we'll what? Combine equations, like linear combinations when we're adding or subtracting, even dividing or multiplying one equation by the other. So we're used to doing that. We're looking for opportunities to do that. And then the 5th step is substitution. You can plug in an easy number to work with, plug in one of the choices, or plug in something actually in the problem. So finally, we'll see that there's going to be some supplemental steps that we'll use. Because if we look at this problem, we can put 1s where they naturally belong. So I have exponents here. So I naturally put exponents on these variables too. But when I try to simplify our factor, there's nothing really to simplify our factor. I can try to combine my equations, but this is a composite, so I'm adding here, but I'm multiplying here. So that's not going to really help me get to where I'm looking in the end. And then finally, can I substitute? Well, again, the same problem. I have a composite adding here, multiplying here. That's not going to help me get to something that looks like this. Okay, so in other words, if you're stuck, there's going to be 5 supplemental steps. And the first of these supplemental steps, or emergency steps, because we don't use them too often, is 1, where are we going in the end? Here we see we're looking for x squared plus y squared. Second is, where are we now? Well, I have x plus y equals 7 and xy equals 4. Third, I ask myself, where was I in the beginning? Meaning maybe there's a factor that I forgot. So I want to check just to make sure. 4, and what terms are the choices? Well, Dr. Gruber in this situation, he kind of forces us to come up with an answer, which is a good policy in general. Write down your prediction, whether it's grammar, English, science, or math. Before you get to your choices, try to write something down to give yourself an easy reference point. And then 5, we have the idea of the 5 steps. So we're going to just double check to see we've used these steps up here. So in this particular case, I'll say, well, based on where I am now, which is the beginning, how would I get to the end? So we're looking at relationships. Well, I see this is x is to the first. This is squared. So you're going to ask yourself, what fundamentally has to happen to get from the beginning to the end? Well, something to the first power needs to be squared or multiplied by itself to get something that's to the second power or something that's squared. So the real question is, can I do this by multiplying these, the x and the y individually, or do I have to do it the whole side squared? And the answer is, based on our properties, which we should know by heart, and which Dr. Gruber has in his book, we do have to square both sides. We can't square the x and y individually. You have to square the whole sides. Again, the x and y are attached to each other. So that's why we need to know these forms. And they are quantity of x plus y squared, which is the same thing as x plus y times x plus y, which is also the same thing as quantity of x plus y squared. So once you have those 3 forms, you say which one is easiest to work with considering what I'm looking for. Well, if you really think about it, it's the third form, the x squared, because once you FOIL, quantity of x plus y times quantity of x plus y, you have x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. And you should know this form by heart, so that if you plug in any variable, whether it's z to the 4th plus z to the 8th quantity squared, or t to the 16th plus z to the 42nd, if you have those even powers, you should know what happens. You'll just replace the x's and y's with whatever variable that you have. And here, we want to see that x squared plus 2xy plus y squared equals, over here we had 7 squared, so that's going to equal 49. And now it's just a matter of using our other 5 steps. So we had the 5th step, which was substitution. If xy equals 4, then we can substitute here. We have 2 times 4. So x squared plus 8 plus y squared equals 49. And then it's just a matter of subtracting the 8 from both sides. 49 minus 8 is 41. So I do have a light pen, by the way. I just forgot to bring it. So there's your 41, and that's your final answer. And notice it matches up with what we're looking for. We need the x squared plus y squared. We got rid of everything else, and that's why we have a 41. So what I highly encourage you to do is use these, especially in the math section. But also remember what the essence of the test is all about. It's about critical thinking, and thinking happens in steps. Where are you in the beginning? What are you looking for in the end? And what are the small steps that you can do, fleshing out your pictures, writing any extra equations that can help you gradually see where you're going. So as the saying goes, Rome was not built in a day. And if you want to get a perfect ACT or SAT score, or even a significant increase in your scores, get into the good habits that make the difference. That means working in steps. It also means good night, good night's sleep, eating a lot of protein, a lot of healthy fats to energize your brain, being good mental habits, even being in good habits to alleviate test anxiety. So if you wanted to boost your scores and work with someone who's helped their students as much as 50 percentile points to the top 1%, I do have 2 openings right now in my schedule. My number here is 513-939-9033. I have free consultations that I'm giving until April 20th. I may not give all the information in the description. It depends on how many calls that I'm getting right now. But you can also visit a+tutoring-testprep.com. I'll be traveling abroad for part of the summer here in 2017. But you can also reach me with questions at md@a+tutoring, that's APLUSTUTORING-testprep.com. So this is Michael DeSalvo signing off. And remember, don't limit yourself. I started with a 3.0 in high school and I really struggled. Even though I was put in a math class in which I had a 99%, I still got a lot of B's and C's, even a D on my final exam in one of my classes. But it was the sort of focus I needed my junior and senior year going into college that helped me become a 4.0 student and graduate magna cum laude. So a lot of you are also capable of that, but it takes a little bit more focus and some clear vision of where you're going in life. So again, my name is Michael DeSalvo here, A+ Tutoring Test Preparation. Hope you enjoyed the presentation this evening, and we'll catch up with you